Today on Mr. Nashville Talks, stand-up comedian, actress, and for many years a star on the Emmy Award-winning The View, Sherri Shepherd. Well, I'm so excited to have Sherri Shepherd here with me on my show. She's been a dream get from the very beginning, and we've been Twitter buddies for several years now.
Yes, for years.
Yeah.
I remember when you tweeted me when I was on The View.
Yeah, all the time. You were my favorite, so I did root for you all the time.
You did. When I was going through stuff, you would encourage me on Twitter. I do remember.
Well, I love you to pieces. You gave me my first promo for the show, too.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, first one.
Hey, everybody, I'm Sherri Shepherd, and when I'm in Nashville, I watch Mr. Nashville Talks.
But you're here, you're doing a show at Zanies, which we love having you here in Nashville for Zanies. And did you know your friend Elizabeth lives here now?
I know, I was just texting her. I'm going to see her after this.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. Okay, great. Well, when did you start doing stand-up? Did stand-up come before the acting, or?
Most definitely. Stand-up came somewhere around 1989 or 90. And a bunch of legal secretaries, probably about 8 of us, I had always wanted to go to a comedy club, and usually, like legal secretaries, we go to bed around 8:30, and I gathered us up, and we went to a comedy club, the Comedy Store in Hollywood. But before that, we went to Sizzlers. When they used to have Sizzlers, we did the all-you-can-eat shrimp and the cheese toast. And we got to the Comedy Store, and I remember it was so magical standing in line, like waiting. And then when we got in, we were sitting there, and there was a bunch of women that I was making laugh before the show started. And then Tamayo Atsuki came on. She was a comedian. Charlie Fleischer came on. Then Eddie Griffin came on. And I remember when Eddie Griffin came on, he was killing, and like the crowd was moving back and forth. And I said, I want to be able to do that. And then Andrew Dice Clay came on. And at that time, with his hickory dickory dock material, he made a lot of women mad. Like a lot of women would get really upset. And so they were getting upset. And the woman in front of me, she leaned back and she went, "You are as funny as him. You could do that." And it's so funny when power of the tongue, like one word could spark something in somebody, which is why I love positivity, because that little thing that she spoke into my spirit, afterwards I couldn't even think anymore, because I kept going, I wonder if I could do that. And Eddie Griffin and Andrew Dice Clay were outside the Comedy Store. All the secretaries had left, and I kind of stood around, and I wanted to approach them. I was so scared. To this day, Eddie Griffin thinks that I was a groupie. I wasn't. I just wanted to ask him, and I finally went up to them, and I said, do you think I could do that? And they said, yeah. And I said, well, how do I do it? And they said, just do it. And I said, but I'm scared. And I remember one of them said, do it scared. And that's like been my mantra for my whole life, is do it scared. But that was when that was sparked. And I went and called up the secretaries, all 8 of them, and I said, do you think that I could do stand-up? And all 7 of them said no. They said no, because it'll take 10 years before you make it. You're not going to make the money that you make, because I was making $40,000 as a legal secretary. That was with overtime and everything. And they were just like, nobody makes it in that business. But one girlfriend, Danetta McKinney, said, if you don't try it, you never know.
That's right.
Again, sparking that. And after that, I started taking comedy classes, and I never looked back.
Well, you did something very hard with your stand-up, because you actually are a clean stand-up, and that's really, really hard in this day and time. I mean, we all go a little bit, but I've seen you many times, and it's something you wouldn't be embarrassed to take your mother to or your wife to. I wouldn't be, but either way, but you're pretty clean, and that's a real compliment to you.
Well, thank you. I'm pretty clean. I mean, you catch me on a good Tuesday, I talk about what's going on in my life. Now, what I say is I talk grown-up stuff. So do I like kids in the audience? The answer is no, because I'm a grown woman.
Right.
And there are things that I'm going through. I don't know if you want to be explaining to your child, why is Miss Sherri divorced twice? Why is Miss Sherri arguing with the pastor about being celibate and arguing with God? I don't know if you want to be talking to your kids about that so soon.
Right.
So I do try to stay in that ground of where I want everybody to be able to come to my show. But I'm a grown up as well.
Yeah,
you know, I'm 50 years old, somewhere in there. Well, thank you very much. A little makeup, a little paint, make you are what you ain't. You know, and so I do try to stay in that realm because I do want everybody to come. I don't want to alienate everybody. So when you come, I think everybody pretty much has a good time.
Well, now you were mentioning some of the people that were at the Comedy Store. Who were your heroes growing up in comedy? Well, I mean, you came later to it, but I'm sure you got something that at early age probably sparked you to want to be in show business.
I think it was Whoopi Goldberg. Whoopi Goldberg was a big influence in my life. Rita Rudner.
Love her.
I used to love Rita and still do.
Yeah.
But just how she would stand in front of a microphone and just kind of, you know, do these rapid fire jokes. And it was just Richard Pryor. I would listen to his comedy records. My dad had them all the time, and there were a lot of like underground comics. Rudy Ray Moore, and he was not clean at all.
Right.
As a matter of fact, Eddie Murphy just did his life story and auditioned for the movie and didn't get the part.
Oh, no.
But he was one that my parents used to listen to. So I listened to a lot of like comedy albums. Red Fox.
Oh yeah,
when I was growing up, LaWanda Page.
Yeah,
LaWanda Page, Mom's Mabley. Those were all the older ones that I listened to. Fast forward to I started out with Sarah Silverman and Chelsea Handler and Monique.
Yeah.
Those are D.L. Hughley, Jamie Foxx, and I started at the same time. Wow. So those are the comics that, you know, I kind of came up with.
Monique's been on the show.
Oh, Monique has been on the show,
And George Wallace. I
love George Wallace, yes.
You have this new show on Netflix, Mr.
Iglesias,
Yeah,
right?
Can you tell us a little bit about that and your character?
Oh, yeah. Mr. Iglesias, I believe it premieres sometime mid-June on Netflix. It's with Gabriel Iglesias, who goes by the moniker Mr. Iglesias. And Gabriel used to want to be, before he got into stand-up, he wanted to be a history teacher.
Oh, wow.
At his school in Long Beach. And this is kind of like follows his life about, you know, being he's a history teacher. It's a sitcom.
Yes.
And he plays a history teacher at his school at his school in Long Beach, and the cast of characters around him. And so I play Paula, the no-nonsense principal of the school, and his really good friend. And so he has, he has Tony Vargas and Richard Gann. He's got some really strong, Maggie Magaha from Gotham. So he's got some really strong actors around him, and it's a really funny sitcom.
Yeah, well, I can't wait to see it. And you know, I watch everything you do, and I tweet you about it. And, you know, we first kind of came into contact through The View, and that's how a lot of people from a wider audience came in contact with you. I saw you before that on other shows, and I'm sure they did too. But how did the co-hosting with you, I know you were a guest first, but how did they scout to find you, or where you sold this deal?
It was, I had been trying to get on The View for years. I was doing a show called Less Than Perfect with Zachary Levi, who's the star of Shazam, the movie Shazam. Zachary Levi and Sarah Rue and Eric Roberts, Andrea Parker, and Andy Dick. And I had been trying to get on The View to just promote my show. And they would never book me on The View because the co-exec producer, Bill Getty, said he didn't know who I was, and he didn't think I could sit on the couch for 4 minutes and talk, literally. And it just, you just have to keep pushing, because they kept saying no, and my publicist kept calling. Meanwhile, all of my cast members had been on the show. And so one day she called, Johnny Cochran, the lawyer, had passed away. And it was the day she called. You never know when something will happen. You just have to keep pushing, because the day she called, Star Jones had to fly into LA. That was her mentor, Johnny Cochran.
Yes.
So Star Jones had to fly into LA. I was pregnant and on bed rest, but they said, "Can you come and fill in for Star Jones?" And I said, yes.
Yeah.
And I flew out there off of bed rest, pregnant. They had to wheel me in a wheelchair, and then I got up and walked to the table. And Joy Behar loved me so much that she said, if I leave, I want Sherri to fill in for me. So I got back home, and they called me again, and they said, can you come back next week to fill in for Joy? And I ended up filling in more than any other guest co-host. I did it like 23 times or something like that. And Barbara asked me to be a regular on The View, because they were going to fire Star Jones.
Right.
And at the time I said, no, that's too messy. I don't like being in all that drama. So I said no. Barbara didn't have me on The View for a year.
Oh no! Yeah, you don't tell Barbara no.
You don't. And I remember saying no, and I said, oh, did I make a mistake? And did I? Ugh. And she didn't have me on for a year. And they went through auditioning other co-hosts when Star left.
Yeah.
And then one of the old presidents of ABC, Brian Franz, he had dinner with Barbara, and he said, you should try Sherri again. And she did. And she had asked me, she said again, I want you to be a regular. And I said, Barbara, I got my son, and I don't know if she walked away from me. She said, goodbye, dear. And she walked away from me. And I said, I think I made a mistake. I think I made the worst mistake of my life. Like, she didn't even look back. And she ended up calling me again after Star had left. And I said, okay. I said, yes.
Yeah. How did you feel when you got it? I mean, overnight, you had to really be taken off,
I did not want to do The View. I said no.
Yeah.
Eddie Murphy, I was doing a movie at the time that Eddie Murphy was producing, and he called me over and he said, you should do The View.
Yeah.
And there was another woman, who was that woman that was married to Babyface? Tracy Edmonds. She said, you should do it. And then Ellen DeGeneres said, you should do it. So big names were telling me that I should do it. Rosie O'Donnell said, you should do it. That's why I said yes. So how did I feel? I was terrified. Even the day I got on the show, I was terrified. Yeah. Rosie O'Donnell helped me negotiate my contract. So I was very thankful to her for that. But there was a woman named Elizabeth Hasselbeck who was so nice to me. She was always so nice to me. Joy Behar, we had to find our groove together, Joy and I. And Whoopi was just like, that was like the auntie in my head. I am still close to each and every one of the members of The View. Sonny Hostin and I talk all the time. And so the only one I don't know is Abby Huntsman. Like, I know Megan, I know Sonny, I know Joy and Whoopi. So you just have to find your groove.
Yes.
That's what it is. Nobody ignored me. I came on the show and there were two other comics. There was Whoopi and there was Joy.
Right.
So then I got to find my groove as far as being funny.
Yes.
The one that reached out the most was Lizzie.
Yeah.
Because we just had a lot in common. We were both Christians. We both had children, and so we were both around. I was like a few years older than Lizzie, but we connected.
Yes. And you saw that on the show. I mean, you look like y'all were best friends, and I mean, it was really a close connection. I mean, it felt like when you were on the show, both, especially when Whoopi was there as well, that it was a family. Mm-hmm. And I know you were kind of there with Rosie first. Right.
I guess I was a fill-in co-host a couple times with Rosie. When the big fight happened with Rosie and Elizabeth, I was there, and it was really interesting because they were trying to figure, it was the job for that position was between Kathy Griffin and me. Oh. It was between us. And so at the time they had given me, Friday used to be a taped show. Yeah. They had given me Thursday and Friday, and then they said, we're gonna give Friday to Kathy, so you only have to do Thursday. Fate is just something special, because Thursday was the day that Rosie and Elizabeth got into that big fight. Yeah. And what they both, Rosie and Elizabeth, liked about me was I tried to diffuse it with humor. Yes. And I whispered in Joy's ear, because everybody was so horrified. I said, we should get up and act like we're leaving. And that's what we did. And the audience kind of laughed. And Elizabeth, in between all the fighting and the commercial break, because I kept going, the baby, because Elizabeth was pregnant. And I said, is the baby okay? And she said, I love you so much because you still care about people. Yeah. And then Rosie said to me, I want you here every day because I like you. Mm-hmm. And they both wanted me. Yeah. And it just so Bill Getty and Barbara Walters liked that I didn't, as in their words, make a career of that day, because so many people would go back once they were on The View. They would go back and do news, and they would say, well, this is what they did and this is what they talked about, and they always told what was going on. And I kind of felt like there was an A and B conversation. Right. I would see my way out. And I never told what happened that day. Right. And they liked that. Yeah. And Kathy Griffin couldn't keep her, she came on Friday and that's all she wanted to talk about was that day, and she wasn't taking the verbal cues of they didn't want to talk about it. Right. So they had to choose between Kathy Griffin and me.
You said that Barbara Walters helps you find your voice.
Yeah.
And she was kind of hard on you. What do you mean by hard?
Oh, she was a tough taskmaster because I said, I cried every day for 3 years. It was a combination of things. It wasn't Barbara Walters making me cry. It was being stretched outside my comfort zone. Yeah. I used to be a Jehovah's Witness for a long time, and Jehovah's Witnesses don't vote. They don't even take, they don't participate in the electoral process.
Right.
So I'm coming on a show from being a Jehovah's Witness. I've never voted before. We were in the first political arena with Barack Obama running. Right. So I had to learn politics.
Yeah, and quick.
Very quickly.
Yeah.
I came from a background of you give the authority to people who are older than you.
Yes.
Don't debate. Don't speak up. Don't let your opinion known.
Yeah.
This is everything that you have to do on The View every single day. So it was just stretching me beyond my comfort zone. I was in New York. I was going through a very painful divorce at the time, and my ex-husband had custody of our son Jeffrey. So I was flying back home every weekend to see Jeffrey, fighting for custody in court. So that was very tiring and depressing. And I was in New York by myself. So I didn't know anybody. And I had come into this place of people going, "Oh my God, are you that girl on the Friends? Are you that girl on the sitcom?" To people now, I would go into a Macy's trying to return a towel, and they go, "Sherri Shepherd." So that was overwhelming.
Yes.
Then I used to do stand-up with my best friend all the time in LA, and I was out there by myself doing stand-up by myself, and I got a load of people who had ulterior motives. They wanted to come on The View. So all of that was just very overwhelming to me. None of my friends were in New York. I couldn't call anybody at 6 a.m. and go over my hot topics and go, "What do you think?" I was kind of on my own out there. I didn't have a church that I go to. So it was and all of the ladies, they all had families. So when The View ended, they would go home. So that in combination of Barbara being a really tough taskmaster, she demanded perfection.
Exactly.
That's how Barbara was, because she went, her career was in an era of Harry Reasoner, where she worked with a lot of men who didn't want a woman around. Right. So Barbara came up in a hard time. So Barbara wasn't the type that would go, "Dear, let me give you a hug." Right. Barbara was like, "Read a book." Yeah, exactly. When you say something, know why you're saying it. Yes. Ask a question. Why are you talking? Right. Make that shorty shorter. I wasn't used to that. But what it took me from, so when I cried every day, I missed home. Sitting at this table was just like nerve-wracking. Right. Trying to figure out, when do I speak? I got 2 comics here. It was like playing double dutch, trying to jump in, to get my opinion in. So, but what Barbara did, when I say she helped me find my voice, because she was hard on me, and she demanded nothing less than the perfection, it made me step up to the plate. So when I made mistakes like saying, "Oh, I don't know if the earth is round or flat," which I do know, it just was a brain fart because I zoned out. I could tell it was all new to you. It was it was so new. But Barbara said to me, she said, "If you don't learn to speak up, I'm going to eat you up." And when somebody says that to you, Barbara Walters says that, then especially it forces you to speak up. Yes, it forces you to put your hand on Barbara's and say, "I'm still talking." Yes, she respected that. Some people would get mad at me and they go, "You cut Barbara off." Barbara respected when you said, "No, I want to talk about this." Barbara, what she didn't like was when you ran in your dressing room and cried, or pouted. Like John McCain came on the show. And whenever somebody like really important like John McCain or Barack Obama would come on, we'd each have our cards. And Barbara would say, "Whoopi, you're going to ask question number 1. Joy, you have question number 3. Sherri, you have question 2. And so we had an order. And I'm a little girl that plays by the rules. Yes. And we would sit on the couch and I'd be ready to read my question 2. And then Joy would jump in with something that wasn't even on the cards. Right. Yeah. Which made news. And then Whoopi would jump in. Then Elizabeth would jump in. And I'd be sitting here going, "Well, I had number 2. I'm gonna take my ball and go home," and I would pout. That's what Barbara didn't like. Yes. And then she called me in her office and she go, "What happened?" And that's the way she didn't go, "Oh, what happened?" She go, "What happened?" And I have to tell her. And I said, "Well, everybody asked the question. They wasn't even doing it according to the cards, and I don't want to hear all that." Right. You were supposed to jump in, find a way to jump. I mean, that's how she talked to me. Right. And after then you know what? The next time somebody came, I jumped in. From working with Barbara, this is the way I talk now. I'm very clear on what I want to say. I'm very opinionated. I'm not afraid to assert my opinion.
Yeah.
I'm not afraid to ask questions. I'm not, when you say no to me, I still push through. And that's because of Barbara.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, you got to interview Barack Obama and maybe Trump too, I guess. I'm not sure.
Interview Trump.
I don't.
Do you know I was the first when Trump decided to get on Twitter? His very first tweet was to me.
Really? Mm-hmm. Well, that is.
I know. Little known fact.
Yeah.
He tweeted me, and that began his ascent into the Twitter Dome universe.
Wow. Yeah, and he made that a whole new art. But
he ain't tweeted me since, but he tweeted me that first time.
Yeah. Well, you went from The View, and you've done so many things since then. I loved while you were on The View, your sitcom Sherri.
Yes. And
I love what you're doing. The wigs, you got that.
I had a wig line, yes.
And but you recently hosted Wendy Williams' show.
Oh yeah.
And you were. I'm watching the show, and I thought, this is Sherri. This is what Sherri needs to do. I'm not saying take her spot, because she's
Wendy, right?
She's owns it. And she's great at what she does. But I think, you have a whole new thing that you could do there, that you're just a joy for morning television.
Yeah.
Would you be interested in doing a show like that?
Oh, I've been wanting a talk show for a long time. It's a little bit harder than what people think on trying to get a talk show.
Right.
I'm still in there trying to pitch a talk show. This was a big blessing, being able to host Wendy's show. And I tell women, you have to know your worth, because they originally, when Wendy unfortunately had to take a break, they wanted me just to do the panel.
Yeah.
And I said, no, I'm not going to do the panel. I said, if you want me to be on the show, I want to host it.
Yes.
And they said, no, we're going to do the panel. I said, okay, then I'm not going to do it.
And I didn't know a soul on that panel.
And they took a lot of comics, and they took a lot of people, pop culture folks, and I said, no, I think sometimes you have to know your worth and not be afraid to say no in the business or in life. And I said no, and then they said okay, and they hung up. And I said, at the same time, like when Barbara walked away from me, I went, oh, did I make a mistake? I think I might have made a mistake. But then they called me a week later, and they said, she's taking another week. We would like for you to host. And then I said, because then I had all the self-worth, I said, well, then I'm going to host. I want 2 days, and I want Monday and I want Tuesday, because working on The View, Monday is always the day everybody watches. That's the biggest, highest rated show, because everything happens over the weekend. They want to hear what you're going to say. So I said, I want Monday and I want Tuesday. And it was a fine job of being able to make that show my own within the confines of Wendy.
Yes.
So I would love to do that. And I'm pitching all around town.
I think having people like you, cheering her on and rooting her on, I think that helps a lot. And this goes back to the person that you are. Faith is a big, important part of your life. I mean, you're a Christian. Mm-hmm. When did I was Jehovah's Witness, sorry. Got a little stuttered up there. Yeah. You were a Jehovah's Witness, and how did you become a born-again Christian? That's like a big jump.
Yeah, being a Jehovah's Witness, you don't even set foot in a church.
Yeah.
I was taught churches are from the devil. I was going through, my mom was very ill with complications from diabetes, like so ill that she was to the point of death. And I would leave the Comedy Store and drive 2 hours to where she lived, and she couldn't sleep, and I would have to drive her around for hours just so she could sleep. And then as soon as I parked in the driveway, she'd wake up and be in pain again, and I'd have to drive her around, and then I'd have to take her to the doctor, and she just was deteriorating before my eyes. Then I was getting evicted all the time because as a Jehovah's Witness, and there's the most wonderful people, I was taught that Armageddon was coming.
You're right.
So I didn't pay any of my bills because I thought Armageddon was coming, and that was just gonna be gone until I got arrested by the police because I had $10,000 worth of traffic warrants, which is that meant my registration on my car was 2 years expired. Because I never bothered to get it registered because I thought Armageddon was coming, like the earth was gonna be destroyed, and and it didn't happen. So consequently, when they would give me a ticket because my registration was expired, I throw it in the glove compartment. I would not appear in court. That's a traffic warrant. And when they stopped me on my way to the Comedy Store one day, I had $10,000 worth of warrants, and they arrested me. Now, mind you, I had on a mini skirt, high heels, because that's the way I used to dress on stage. Because when you got that kind of body, I had it on stage, and a mini skirt skirt and long braids and high heels, and they arrested me and they took me to jail. And I remember they handcuffed me to the bench, and they kept telling everybody, shut up, don't talk, the police. So I was trying to communicate with my eyes that, hey, I'm a comic, I'm a legal secretary, please help me. Then I looked at all the women that were handcuffed next to me, all the prostitutes, and we were all dressed the same. So I'm like, oh my gosh, they think I'm a hooker. And it was over Martin Luther King weekend.
Oh no.
So they arrested me on a Friday. And they took me to the worst police station in LA, which was Rampart. They even had a movie about Rampart. It was like all corrupted. I was there Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Oh no.
And Monday was a holiday. So Tuesday they processed me, took me to a bigger facility that housed 2,000 women called Sybil Brand. They closed this down because it was corrupt. So I went to Sybil Brand, and each day I had to go to 4 different courts where my warrants were. So literally I had to be there with a bunch of women. We're fighting and all this other stuff. I made women laugh. Like literally, I have a woman who still comes to see my shows who was in jail with me, and her name is Shay. She's a security guard now. She's so proud of herself, and she comes to see me. But she would tell me in jail, she would tell people, don't mess with Sherri because she gonna be somebody. She gonna be funny, and that's the way she said, she gonna be funny. And she really looked out for me. Still comes to my shows, but every day I was going to a different court. They used to chain me up and put me on this black and white bus. And to this day, I say, if you see a prison bus, just wave a little bit. Stop acting like you don't see the people inside. Just wave, because, and then they had to take me to all these different courts, and people looked at me like I killed somebody. It was awful. But I was going through all of that, and I was not a Jehovah's Witness. And in going through all of that and struggling and getting evicted, I said to myself, it's got to be better than this. Like, once I left being a Jehovah's Witness, I really didn't have any kind of faith, because we're taught that Christians in church are from the devil.
Right.
And the only true religion is the Jehovah's Witnesses. So I wasn't a Jehovah's Witness. So I was like, what do I have? I don't have anything. And there was an encounter with a gentleman on a bus one day. And he said, what church do you go to? And I was like, church? And he started talking to me about Jesus Christ. And he started talking to me about not having rules, just loving Jesus. And it just really, like, I was homeless at the time. I was staying on friends' couches, and I had a bunch of my clothes in this pillowcase because I didn't pay my bills, so I was always getting evicted. And he told me about his church, and I remember going to his church with all my stuff in this pillowcase, and I sat in the back, and it's just like such a peace came over me. Until they started talking in tongues. I didn't get that tongue talking with a and I was like, oh, this from the devil. I never heard this. Met people falling, because Jehovah's Witness, the Kingdom Hall, is very orderly. It's like, from house to house, from door to door, Jehovah's word we spread. Very, very nice. You hold your hand up, and they say, Sister Shepherd, you want to say something? And we talk like this, and it's very orderly. God has a sense of humor, because the first church he sent me to was Pentecostal. I didn't know nothing about no Pentecostal. That's what, hallelujah, hallelujah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And I was sitting there going, I didn't went straight to hell. What in the heck is going on? This lady didn't, oh gosh, people are falling down the aisles. The lady wig didn't come off. Oh my God, they laying blankets over the people. And I can dance all night. And then the drums are starting. And I was going, what is going on? But this peace came over me.
Yes.
And I kept going back, and I kept going back. And then the pastor, Bishop Charles E. Blake from West Angeles Church of God in Christ. That's another thing. These churches got all these long names. The Church of God in Christ, Pentecostal Dr. Reverend Martin Luther. This is all the, and he said, if you want to have a relationship with Jesus, come up. And I walked up, left my stuff under the pew, and I walked up. And I was feeling so good. Then they started hitting me in my head. Yeah. That's another thing I tell these pastors. When you laying hands on people, don't hit them so hard in the head. All of this thing right here. Just put your hand on their head.
Little touch.
Yeah, real gentle like. Yes. I'm not going anywhere. And all of this. And then they were like, with the evidence. I don't remember, but they were like, he's showing the evidence of the Holy Spirit speaking in tongues. And I was like, what am I supposed to say? And they started speaking again. And here we go with that language. And but it was such a peace that came over me. And from then I accepted Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior. And I have never looked back.
That's
now,
wonderful.
am I imperfect? Do I say some words I ain't supposed to? And I go, but thank you, Lord, that you still love me.
That's what grace is for.
Yes.
And there are no perfect people except Christ, you know.
That's it.
And, you know, he was a sacrifice. So for us, for our sin debt, so he doesn't expect us to be perfect. You know, just try
That's
for
it.
You know, just try for it. And you do such a great job.
Well, that was
and
my
you're such a
conversion.
witness.
I just hope that they get, there's something different about Sherri. There's a joy
Yes.
that Sherri has, and that joy is Jesus.
Yes, yes.
And so I'm a little bit rawer, you know, with my Jesus loving, but I hope that you get from me that there's a really great way, that even when
Yes.
you fall, you can get back up. Why can you get back up? Jesus. That when you go through trials and tribulations, there's, you know, weeping may endure for the night, but joy comes in the morning.
That's right.
And so I can make you laugh from that. So when people say to me, how do you come up from painful divorce, not one but 2 times? How do you go through this? How do you deal with that when you're not working? Jesus.
Yes, right.
Then I'll explain it to you.
That's right. Well, I have a gift for you.
Oh,
since
thank
you're
you. I
gifting
love
us.
gifts.
And
Is it a car?
no, it's not that good of a gift. It's not that good of a gift. I'm not Oprah.
Is it a house?
I'm not Oprah. This is a nightgown for you. Because I couldn't even.
What are you trying to ask me?
No, I'm not going to ask you.
I love
was scared
nightgown.
to
I have
try
never had a man say to me.
Well, it's actually a shirt, but I knew you were. Well, you see, you know, I've got this.
I like shirts.
So
I
but
love.
anyway, This is one of our show shirts, so we got it. It's big, so you can sleep in it.
Look at that.
Yeah.
So when I go to bed, I'm going to be thinking about you,
Yeah,
Larry.
you'll be I'll be close to your heart.
Okay,
Or
Mr.
something
Nashville
else.
has effectively marked his territory. That's what
right.
it. Look at you,
Right.
Mr. Nashville. I love this shirt. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I love big gowns that I can wear and read my books and everything at night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Nashville Talks.
Thank you for being on our
like
show.
that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for
love
having
you.
me. Thank you. Had a good
bless you.
time.
Subscribe to our mailing list and you could win a CD or DVD project by today's featured artist. To enter, please go to www.mrnashvilletalks.com and enter your email address. While there, take a look around, browse through our music store, or order one of our Mr. Nashville Talks t-shirts for $20. Our show is totally funded by viewer support. I want to hear from you, so follow our social media via Twitter, Instagram, or like us on our Facebook page.